Hello, my friend. I'm glad you're here again. Take a slow breath in. Hold it for a moment. And let it go. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts settle wherever they need to. This is your space. A small pause between all the noise. A quiet return. Today's question is this. Why do we keep moving forward, even when we're not sure what we're moving toward? There are moments in life when forward motion feels automatic, almost mechanical. Days stack themselves one on top of another, and we follow along because that's what days do. They arrive, they pass, and somehow we're still here in the middle of them. We wake up, we answer messages, we show up where we're expected, and we keep walking even when the path ahead feels foggy. Not dark exactly, just unclear. As if the horizon has softened its edges and decided not to explain itself today. Maybe you've felt that quiet confusion before, not panic, not despair, just a low, steady wondering that hums beneath your routines. You're doing the things you're supposed to do, yet a part of you asks, gently, almost shyly, where all this motion is actually leading. And still, you move, you make coffee, you tie your shoes, you say yes to tomorrow. I once knew someone who took the same train every morning for years. Same platform, same carriage, same seat near the window when it was available. From the outside, it looked like certainty. A life with direction, with schedules, with purpose, neatly printed on a monthly calendar. But one evening, over a quiet dinner, he admitted something he'd never said aloud before. He said he didn't know anymore why he was doing any of it. Not in a dramatic way, just honestly. He wasn't unhappy, he wasn't fulfilled either. He was simply moving forward, because stopping felt heavier than continuing. There's something deeply human in that. Movement can feel safer than stillness. Forward feels better than stuck. Even when we don't know the destination, motion gives us the illusion of control. It tells us we're participating in our lives, not just watching them pass by. And maybe that's not an illusion at all. Maybe movement itself is a form of faith, not faith in a specific outcome, but faith that being alive means responding to the next moment as it arrives. When you think about it, very few of us truly know where we're going. We create stories after the fact, connecting dots that only make sense in reverse. But while we're inside the living of it, we're often guided by quieter things. A feeling, a responsibility, a promise we made to someone we care about. Sometimes just the simple instinct to see what tomorrow brings. There was a morning, years ago, when I watched an elderly woman walking slowly through a park. Her steps were careful, measured, almost fragile. She stopped often, not because she was tired, but because she noticed things. A leaf turning yellow, a bird hopping too close to her shoes, the light shifting between the trees. When she finally reached a bench, she sat down with a sigh that sounded like relief rather than exhaustion. Later, when someone asked her where she was headed, she smiled and said, "I just needed to be outside today." That answer held more wisdom than most long explanations ever could. Sometimes forward isn't about reaching something. Sometimes it's about honoring a quiet inner nudge that says, keep going, even if only for today. We're taught to believe that movement must be justified, that every step should have a reason, a plan, a measurable result. But life rarely unfolds that neatly. Often, we're propelled forward by forces we don't fully understand. Grief that hasn't settled yet, hope that hasn't found words, curiosity that refuses to stay silent. Even love can push us forward in strange ways, asking us to endure uncertainty simply because someone or something matters. Think about the times you kept going when it would have been easier to stop, not because you were sure, but because something inside you wasn't ready to let go yet. Maybe it was a relationship that still had warmth left in it. Maybe it was a dream that no longer looked realistic, but still felt alive. Maybe it was just the stubborn, beautiful instinct to survive. There's a story that comes to mind of a man who lost his job unexpectedly after decades in the same role. For months, he wandered through his days with no clear direction. He applied for positions he wasn't sure he wanted. He took long walks without knowing where they led. Friends worried about him, mistaking his quiet for defeat. But one afternoon, while sitting in a small cafe he'd never visited before, he struck up a conversation with a stranger. That conversation turned into a new opportunity, one that reshaped the final chapter of his working life in ways he could never have planned. Later, he admitted that the hardest part wasn't losing the job. It was trusting that moving forward without a map was still movement, not failure. We rarely give ourselves credit for that kind of courage. The courage to continue without guarantees. The courage to trust that clarity sometimes follows action, not the other way around. So why do we keep moving forward? Maybe because life itself is movement. Even standing still requires effort. Even waiting is a form of participation. The heart keeps beating, the breath keeps arriving, time keeps unfolding, whether we're ready or not. And within that constant motion, we're invited, gently, persistently, to take the next step that feels possible. Not the perfect step, not the bravest one, just the next one. Before you answer this question too quickly, pause for a moment. Think about what has carried you forward so far. Not the big milestones, but the small, quiet reasons. The mornings you got out of bed because someone needed you. The nights you stayed hopeful just long enough to see another sunrise. The moments you chose to continue simply because you weren't finished being here. There's no requirement to know where you're headed right now. There's no deadline for certainty. Moving forward doesn't mean you're confident. Sometimes it simply means you're listening to life, to yourself, to the subtle pull of becoming. And maybe that's enough for today. Thank you for being here, for giving yourself this moment to reflect. Stay gentle, stay curious, and stay kind. And if this question spoke to you, continue your journey with us on Yarven's Questions. More stories, more reflections, and more quiet truths are waiting for you. Take care, my friend. Until next time.